kung nagka-COVID ka na, do you really need to get vaccinated? Pwede bang exempted ka na sa vaccination?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, no?
Mabuhay at welcome sa Decipher kung saan malaliman ang usapan pero simple ang paliwanag. Ako si Christine Sabilio at para sa episode na ito, makakausap natin si Dr. Rontgene Solante, isang infectious disease specialist na masugid na sumusubaybay sa issue ng COVID-19 vaccines. Maraming salamat, Doc Jean, sa pagpapaunlak ulit na makausap ko kayo tungkol sa bakuna kasi it's more than a year na since the pandemic started. Napakadami nang nangyari. Itong issue ng bakuna, ng COVID vaccines ay marami pa rin mga katanungan yung mga tao. In fact, so alam ko pong busy kayo at may susunod pa kayong meeting. Kaya papasadahan ko na po siguro straight to the point kahit pahapyaw lang po. Alam ko marami pa rin kasi na may ilan pa rin na nagdududa or parang hindi pa convinced na magpabakuna, may ganun pa rin ano. Kung kayo po ay tatanungin, i-explain nyo sa isang ordinaryong Pilipino, ano po ba yung bakuna? At paano ba ito nakakatulong sa katawan natin?
Okay, so ang bakuna ay isang matatawag natin, no, biological substance na binubuo ng komplikadong material na galing ng isang mikrobyo din, no? Pag ibibigay ito sa katawan natin, this bakuna will stimulate, no, yung tinatawag natin na immune system to produce specific antibodies. Ano ba yung antibodies? Ito yung pangontra doon sa mga mikrobyo kung saan ginagawa itong bakuna para hindi kakalat ang infection. At marami na tayong karanasan sa mga bakuna. In fact, this is one of the greatest innovation in humans wherein a lot of mga outbreaks or epidemics or even pandemics, no, na nako-control because once you have that antibody will protect that individual to get the infection and at the same time prevent also the infection from being transmitted. Napaka-importante sa transmission at sa kapag develop ng severe infection ang bakuna na it will really be beneficial to mankind. Kaya siguro kung makikita natin, marami tayong mga bakuna na ginagawa na binibigay sa tao, yung tinatawag natin na routine vaccination, like yung influenza, flu, or pneumococcal, no? Sa mga bata naman, yung measles, okay, chickenpox, hepatitis B. So these really are interventions, novel interventions, and invention na nakita natin na napakahalaga sa pagkontrol ng infectious disease.
Doc, I think maraming hesitant about the vaccine kasi parang likido lang siya, no? Parang ano ba yan? Ano bang laman yan? Natatakot silang ipasok sa kanilang katawan. At siguro nakalimutan na nila nung bata sila. Actually, normal na pinagdadaanan yan yung mga bakuna. Ano po ba yung mga iba't ibang klase ng bakuna? I remember yung mga inactivated vaccines, di ba? Ito ba ay virus talaga nung COVID? How would you explain that po sa mga tao na maaring walang background sa science?
Okay, so mag-focus tayo dito sa COVID vaccines. Now, itong virus na to, and alam natin na pag dadapo sa iyo to, mataas ang chance na pwede kang mag-severe, critical, mas mataas pa rin ang chance na mas maraming mild, no? Now, ang mga bakuna ngayon na ginagawa para dito sa COVID-19, meron tayo mga 4 or 5 platform. Yung mga subok na platform ay yung tinatawag natin na inactivated vaccines. Ano ba itong inactivated vaccines, no? So ito, mismo yung virus ng COVID, tapos tinanggal yung virulence niya, so weakened siya, inactivated na siya, na pag binabakuna mo siya, hindi na siya makakause ng infection, but being the structure is still there, na nandun pa rin yung virus, will really stimulate your immune system to produce what we call virus-specific neutralizing antibody.
Can I ask about yung inactivated vaccine? Sabi niyo pinahina siyang virus. So, hindi na siya, yung iba kasi natatakot sila na baka mag-positive sila sa PCR test, parang ganun kasi may virus na sila sa katawan. Paano niyo po ba i-explain yung inactivated virus?
Okay, so being inactivated, hindi na siya buhay. Okay. Hindi na magre-reflect yung RNA niya dahil it's inactivated and basically it's not really a live virus. Okay. Just to make sure na talagang it's safe, no? It's safe. And in fact, yung proseso niyan bago nila ginawa ng bakuna, they have to have 2 or 3 steps in the process that it should be weakened and inactivated.
Tapos Doc, ito yung sasabing traditional na bakuna. Tama po ba Sinovac, Sinopharm? Yan yung mga klase ng COVID vaccines na inactivated virus yung gamit. Tama po ba?
Yes, kasi madali kasi silang gawin dahil kumbaga itong mga companies na to, gumagawa na rin sila ng bakunang before, tapos ngayon, it's just a matter na nag-propagate sila ng COVID virus, tapos inactivate nila. So the same mechanism, the same process of the other vaccines na ginagamit before.
Thanks, Doc. Go on, you were mentioning yung subunit type ng vaccine.
The subunit vaccine ito naman ay kumukuha lang ng isang parte sa katawan ng sa structure ng virus to stimulate the production of the antibody, no? So itong subunit, kumuha sila ng spike protein, no? And then meron silang tinatawag na mga adjuvant, no? Yung adjuvant na yan is the one that will carry the protein into our body and will stimulate our immune system to produce again an antibody specific against the COVID virus, no? So ito yung mga Novavax, Covavax, no? Okay. Tapos pangatlong platform yung tinatawag natin na virus vector. Medyo marami-rami to, yung Sputnik, yung Astra, at saka yung Janssen, no? So ito naman, gumamit sila ng virus, okay, causing respiratory infection, yung adenovirus. At yung adenovirus is also inactivated. Kumuha sila ng component ng COVID virus in the form of yung spike protein. Hinalo nila doon sa adenovirus. And kasi ang adenovirus is also a stimulant for our immune response. So doon, it produces a specific antibody against the COVID-19 virus. No? Yung pang-apat na platform, ito yung first time na nakikita natin na hindi pa nagawa before, no? Pero actually, there were already vaccines before, like the Ebola are also mRNA, no? Na subukan na rin. And these are the Pfizer and Moderna. So ito namang mRNA vaccines, they got the synthetic mRNA, a genetic material that is involved in replication. Okay? So bakit mRNA? Dahil ito yung madaling makita ng immune system natin at ma-recognize. And then this mRNA is encoded with the spike protein so that again, it produces an antibody specific for the spike protein. So kung makikita mo to, Christine, lahat itong mga bakuna na to, the point of target is really an antibody against the spike protein. Okay? Why the spike protein? Because the spike protein is a part of the virus that binds to our cells. So ito yung kumakapit ng katawan natin, no? So meaning for the vaccine to prevent the replication of the virus, doon pa lang sa pagkapit dapat nandun na yung antibody mo para hindi makaproceed into dadami ang virus.
Thanks, Doc. Para ang malinaw naman dito, bawat vaccine, iba-iba mang siyang klase, there's a part of it that allows yung ating katawan, no, na makilala yung COVID virus without actually having the actual live virus sa katawan natin. Kaya ligtas naman ito. And tama po ba, kahit dun sa ibang klase na vaccines, hindi lang yung inactivated, hindi naman sila dapat magpa-positive sa PCR test. Tama po ba?
Yes, yeah. Christina, I would just like to emphasize again, no, na para lang maintindihan din ng mga tao na ang paggawa ng bakuna has to undergo several phases of development, no? Yung phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And before a particular pharmaceutical company can proceed to each of these phases, tinitingnan din to ng regulatory body nila. So ibig sabihin, napaka-stricto ng regulatory body for this each of the phases of development. Kaya we really can assure no na pag dumaan ka na sa phase 3 at meron ka ng resulta sa phase 3, that's it, no? Ang nangyari lang ngayon dahil because of the pandemic, no, the usual vaccine development phase 3 will take like 5 to 10 years, no? In fact, then vaccine was 20 years before it was really became a vaccine, no? Because tinitingnan lahat ng aspeto ng bakuna. But because of the pandemic, we can't wait 10 years. Baka maubos tayo lahat. So, meron tayong tinatawag na interim data after receiving the 2 vaccines in the phase 3 data. Kung ano man yung efficacy niya, binibigay kaagad natin yun sa ginamit kaagad sa tao sa actual vaccination.
Maganda yung point niyo po na kung aantayin natin na unti-unti yung process, no, matagal masyado and maraming buhay yung maaaring mawala. Is it correct to say na the fact na we were able to do this, to have vaccines this early, marami na tayong buhay na na-save sa iba't ibang bansa?
Napaka-importanting tanong yan, no? Because on the ground, Christine, if I'm going to relate again, no, sa mga na-admit natin na mga pasyente, San Lazaro at saka doon sa mga private hospitals kung saan ako affiliated, 80% of those who are not vaccinated are the ones in the hospitals and are the ones in the critical care unit. No, pag ikumpara natin yung nangyari last year, kung pag-umpisa ng pandemic at pag-umpisa ng pandemic this year, malaking difference because this year we already have the vaccine while last year we only rely on investigational medications, and that's why mataas ang rate ng mortality.
Doc, despite yung data, no, there's scientific proof na from other countries as well na marami ng vaccinated showing na ligtas ito, maraming naililigtas na buhay. Marami pa rin kumakalat na conspiracy theory. May isang nagtanong sa akin sa Twitter, pinapatanong niya sa inyo, si Father Neil Halandoon. Sabi niya, bakit kaya maraming conspiracy theories about the vaccine? Tapos he mentioned maraming mga nagsasabi pang after 2 years, pwede kang maging zombie. Ako, I've heard about yung microchip. Siguro, Doc, pwede niyong sagutin yung conspiracy theory first dun sa mga naniniwala. Baka may nakikinig ngayon. But at the same time, bakit po kaya these kinds of information, there's still, some people still believe it?
Okay, if you're familiar with the term anti-vaxxers, no? Anti-vaxxers has been during the time also of the Spanish flu, then gumawa sila ng bakuna. There are already people that were really against vaccine, okay? And that has been handed down for several generations until now, okay? Hindi na natin mawawala yan, maalis yan dahil these people are also institutionalized and they have also sinasabi nilang evidence, science-based na mga evidence na ang vaccine ay hindi safe, no? But let's go to the point, no? Alam natin na marami pa ring haka-haka dahil sa bakuna, dahil especially with the COVID-19, unang-una, minamadali daw. Okay? Pangalawa, pag sinasabing mRNA, that's a genetic material that really is important in the replication and can also code for other possible mutations which is also sensitive. But again, these are synthetic. No? These are, I mean, when you will be injected with the mRNA, they will be inactivated soon after once it's in the body. Pag in a few minutes, it will not be there long in our body. So it's normal na meron talagang mga critics sa bakuna, and some of these critics are being driven by the fact na through the years meron talagang ganun mag-isip, yung tinatawag natin na malikot ng isip in terms of konsepto nito sa bakuna.
For the record, Doc, imposible namang maglagay ng microchip sa vaccine, ano po? Hindi siya, is it even possible or even in the process itself, sa sobrang rigorous nung proseso ng pag-deploy ng bakuna?
Ang tingin ko nga dyan, Christine, no, sa sobra siguro lang panood ng Netflix, no? So sa mga ganong klaseng i-imagine na lang nila na pag meron kang bakuna ng ganito, it can really cause you adverse na tinatawag natin na yung mga ganon. But again, no, we would like to make this official and important na kung meron pa tayong ganito, bakit lahat ng bansa ngayon are really into getting vaccines, no? Dahil nga sa ganyang nangyayari ngayon, nagiging kulang ang bakuna, supply ng bakuna.
Doc, with at least sa Metro Manila, no, medyo marami nang nabakunahan, but there are still cases of people vaccinated saying they got sick. But although iba-iba din kasi yung sitwasyon, may mga nagsasabi na maaring sa vaccination site nila nakuha, no, hindi pa nag-kick in yung vaccine, and then there are others as well na hindi pa fully vaccinated. Ano po ba yung mga factors na tinitignan kung bakit ang isang tao na nabakunahan na first dose man or second dose ay maaring magka-COVID pa rin?
Okay, magandang point yan yung sinasabi mo, no, yung sa vaccination center na pwedeng magkahawaan doon. And in fact, we encountered a lot of these cases na na-admit na first dose pa lang nanggaling sa vaccination center, nagkasakit. Ang masama lang doon, parang sinasabi nila na dahil sa bakuna, nagkasakit sila, no? So, we need to really put important informations para lang makorrect yung thinking nila. Okay, ganito yan, no? When you go to the vaccination center, wala kayong bakuna, as in wala talaga kayong protection. And that's why in the vaccination center, we emphasize strict compliance of the health protocol. So yan. Pag nabakunahan ka na, galing ka ng vaccination center, okay? Now, if you were exposed 7 days ago, 5 days ago, and then you don't have the symptoms, nabakunahan ka, you may develop the first signs of symptoms 7 days after getting the vaccine. Okay? Why? So sasabihin nila, hindi naman pala ito mabisa ang bakuna, nagka-COVID pa rin ako. With one dose, no? Kasi you are not yet protected. Okay? It takes 2 weeks before the first dose will kick in to produce initial antibody. Now, isa-isahin natin. For Pfizer, it will take 3 weeks. You will have the second dose. Wala ka pa rin protection because it will take 2 weeks after getting the second dose, you'll have the protection. With AstraZeneca, medyo mahaba-haba ang interval nito, no? 9 to 12 weeks, no? But the first dose, you'll already have like 60% protection with the first dose. But that 60% is 60%. You still have the 40. Kaya ang palagi nating sinasabi, you do not be complacent when you receive the first dose, because the moment you receive the second dose, that's only the time that you are fully vaccinated and you have optimal protection against the infection.
Yeah, Doc, actually ako, I got fully vaccinated a few months ago, and AstraZeneca ako So ang haba nung wait time ko. During that time, I was so careful din. Hindi talaga ako lumalabas because I'm blessed enough to have work na would not require me to go out, no? Ang nakikita ko nga dito, malaki talagang role din ng LGU dun sa vaccination site to ensure na hindi magkahawaan. Like, ako maswerte ako yung LGU namin, parang may queuing system sila, may oras talaga ng pagpunta, and mabilis lang yung proseso. Although yung second dose ko parang inabot ako na 4 na oras din. But you know, factors like that, LGUs also have a responsibility for that.
Yes, napaka-importante ng health protocol while in the vaccination center. Kasi remember you are in a room where you have a lot of these people queuing for line, and while waiting for 4 hours, as sinabi mo na, you'll be talking, you'll be interacting, and if 1 or 2 individuals there are positive, kasi walang mga sintomas yan, we don't require naman na magpabakuna ka. Bago ka magpabakuna, you have to be tested, no? We don't require that, no? So that's the risk that we need to be cautious with, no? At importante sa mga vaccination center ang physical distance at saka yung ventilation, no? Napaka-importante niyan dahil kung hindi natin gagawin yan, mataas ang risk na pwede tayong magkahawaan sa vaccination center.
Doc, ito matagal lang tanong, but I wanted to ask you again. Yung iba-iba kasing bakuna, iba-iba yung klase niya, iba-iba din yung sinasabing efficacy rate. May saysay pa po ba yung tignan yung efficacy rate? I've seen may mga explanation din sa video na parang mahirap din daw kasi nung kinuha yung data na yun, iba-iba din yung sitwasyon, no, sa mga bansa kung saan kinuha yung efficacy rate. But right now po ba, is it an accurate na batayan para sabihin ba na mas equivalent ba siya na sabihin mas effective tong isang bakuna to kumpara sa isa pang bakuna?
Yes, no, naintindihan natin yan kasi itong mga bakuna na to, during the time that the clinical trial was done, they have different environment, okay? The population being studied are also different race, ethnicity, at the dose, no? The dose of the vaccine also matters a lot, no? So ito yung mga nakita natin, yung 1 dose, 2 dose, tapos like for example, no, yung mRNA vaccine ng Pfizer, it's a 30 microgram, while yung Moderna, it's a 100 microgram, no? So there's a difference in that, no? Yung sa virus vector, magkaiba din ang dosage, no? So we cannot really compare each of these na parang ito mahina to dahil ito lang ang efficacy, no? Ito mahina, malakas to dahil mataas to. Dito ako, no? But as we go along with the different vaccines, and we are already mga 8 to 9 months already after the clinical trial, nakita natin na there are vaccines really that maintain its efficacy. Bumaba man ng konti, but not so significant. Okay? Yung iba naman talagang nagwi-wane ang protection. Okay? So the first 2 months of the vaccine is an indication of how good the vaccine is, no? But the later months of the vaccine is how good that vaccine, durability of the vaccine will also be evaluated. Ngayon, dito na tayo sa punto, yung durability ng vaccine in terms of the length of the protection. Were they able to maintain the protection that was seen 2 months ago, or 3 months ago, or 6 months ago? Was it same as that, or bumaba ba? So, dito natin makikita ngayon kung ano ang current situation ng mga bakuna. But, okay, there are aspects of the endpoints of these vaccines na medyo na-maintain pa rin, no? And that is the ability of this vaccine to protect us from severe infection. Okay, so probably later on we can discuss on the waning immunity or the booster.
Actually, Doc, sakto. Kasi I received one question from Luis A. on social media. And he wanted for you to explain yung waning effectiveness. I'm not so familiar with this. Na sinasabi niya hype daw ito, yung waning effectiveness of vaccines, and why people should understand the role of memory B and T cells in developing longer-term immunity. Could you explain that too, sir?
Okay, so there are 4 factors with waning immunity that will lead into what we call a breakthrough infection. Okay, so ipaliwanag natin yan, no? Ano ba ang breakthrough infection? A breakthrough infection are those infection due to COVID because of the inability of the vaccine to protect them longer. Okay, so ang tawag niyan is breakthrough infection because of waning immunity. Number 1, one of the important cause of waning immunity is from time to vaccination. Okay, nakikita natin ngayon data in Israel, data in the US, that those that were vaccinated in January, nung nakita ng June, nagka-reinfection. So it's because bumaba yung neutralizing antibody. Okay? Pangalawa, yung vaccine type, no? May mga vaccine type na mas mabilis ang waning protection. So ibig sabihin bumaba yung ability to maintain that antibody compared to other vaccines. At nakita natin yan sa Sinovac at saka sa Sinopharm. Okay. Pangatlo, what's the third cause of these breakthrough infections? Yung tinatawag natin na variants of concern. So nakita natin with Delta variant, bumaba ang efficacy ng Pfizer, ng Astra, and some of these Chinese vaccines. At pang-apat is the immunocompromised host. yung mga merong cancer, merong mga malignancy who are taking immunosuppressive drugs. Because when you are giving these vaccines to them, because of their condition na meron silang cancer, they cannot express and produce much antibody. Okay? So ito yung four scenarios ngayon. Bakit nag-wane ang protection at bakit tayo merong breakthrough infection?
So, actually, nandito ako sa part ng aking questions, yung napakadaming tanong about booster shots. Specifically, I think these are some people mention yung mga bakuna nila. There's not a lot of confidence and that's the reality. Let's accept it. Yun yung naririnig talaga natin ngayon sa mga Pinoy, no? About Sinovac and Sinopharm because of yung naunang lumabas na efficacy rates nila. And you mentioned nga because probably of the vaccine type. Ano po yung pwede niyong sabihin siguro dun sa mga nag-worry na do they need a booster shot? Ano ba yung pwede nilang gawin to get added protection? Especially ito yung mga nabakunahan at the start in March, as early as March, April. Ano yung pwede nilang gawin ngayon?
Okay, so the answer there is booster shots needed? Yes, no? It's just a matter of time that booster shots will be needed, no? Because there are evidence now na bumababa ang protection ng mga bakuna na to. But we always maintain na even with the lower protection, the ability of this vaccine to protect us against severe and critical stage is maintained, no? Even with Sinovac and Sinopharm. But there are specific population where there is a concern that when their protection is going down, the risk also of being severe critical is very high. Ano ito? These are the 60 years old and above. Okay? Pangalawa, ito yung mga immunocompromised na mga cancer or immunosuppressive drugs. No? So, if we are going to give booster, okay, in the context na limited ang bakuna natin, then we will not be giving everyone a booster. We will only be giving a booster to those high risk for developing severe critical and death, no? And these are the 60 years old and above and the immunocompromised individual.
Doc, related to that, yung mga vulnerable sector, na may ilan din nagtanong sa akin, either they're health workers themselves or yung mga kamag-anak nila is health workers. Kailan daw po kaya pwedeng mabigyan ng booster shots yung health workers?
Yeah, so isa yan sa mga tinitinan din ng gobyerno natin na the healthcare workers will be one of the priority for the booster shots, no? Because the fact na yung healthcare workers, yung tinatawag natin na occupational risk. You go to the hospital every day, deals with COVID patients. You have to maintain that the level of protection so that you cannot get the infection and you will not get sick. No? So the government is already has a plan for the booster. It's just a matter of time kung dadami ang makuha nating bakuna within November or December. Hopefully, makastart tayo ng booster or kung hindi naman, kung kulang pa rin, baka first quarter of next year. But that's already part of the what they call this, the process, no, nung procurement ng gobyerno natin na part of that is the booster, which is also I want to mention this na ang pinaka importante pa rin natin, no, na objective is to get the 80 to 90% herd immunity. Okay, at that expense, when we give the booster, we'll only be giving to those who are high risk and highly vulnerable population, not for the general public.
Doc, I'm not that updated anymore. Ano yung inaantay nating percentage, if ever, for the government to say, okay, medyo kampante na kami na ganito kadami na bakunahan, we can give the other doses for booster shots?
As long as we can reach siguro 80%, no? I think that's the most important number na ma-reach natin ang 80% ng vaccination rate natin, fully immunized. Medyo maganda-ganda na ang laban natin dyan and we can allocate booster doses for the vulnerable population.
And we're at anong percent na po right now, if you're familiar po dun sa data?
Okay, sa total population, based on total population, I think almost mga 30 to 30%. We're already almost 30%, no? So I think the the target of the government is to reach at least 40% before the end of the year, and hopefully higher than that.
Okay. Parang a long way to go pa, Doc, yung 80%. But you're saying at least by the end of the year, there's a tiny possibility na magka-booster shots for the very vulnerable. Tama po ba kahit hindi pa natin naabot yung 80%? It's a possibility.
Yes, yes, it's a possibility na hopefully marami-rami ng mga bakunang darating, no? Actually, marami-rami naman talaga, no? And I hope that will be a realization also na mabakunahan natin ang vulnerable for the booster.
Doc, ay malayo pa nga, wala pang approved na booster shot sa Pilipinas, pero maraming nagtatanong din about the combinations. Out of curiosity lang, no? It's highly hypothetical lang. Perhaps may nababasa kayo from other countries as well. Yung mga nabakunahan ng Sinovac, pwede ba daw sila mabakunahan ng ibang brand? Is there such a thing as mix and match ng mga booster shots?
Yes, no. So unahin natin, no, yung mga fully vaccinated ng Sinovac, there are two options there na pwede nating ibigay as a third dose, no. Yung one is the mRNA, the Pfizer or the Moderna, and this has been used in other Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia. They're using Pfizer and Moderna third dose for their 65 years old and above and healthcare workers. In Indonesia, fully vaccinated Sinovac, they're using Astra as the third dose. Okay, and I think one is in Cambodia. No? They're also using AstraZeneca as the third dose. No, so pwede nating ipaghalo. Ang tawag na yan is the heterologous boosting. So meaning, magbibigay ka ng different platform with the Sinovac because with this platform, nakikita na mas mataas ang antibody protection compared to giving a third dose of your Sinovac. If Sinovac, since we have more supplies with Sinovac third dose is also another option, no? Kasi may data naman na mataas din ang antibody with the third dose of the Sinovac.
Doc, for the other brands, do we, kunwari ako AstraZeneca, do I even need the booster shot after a year, after 8 months? Or lalo na yung
Yes, I think Yes. So ang magiging priority lang ngayon is those who were given the Sinovac, no? But data from other countries that has received like Pfizer, they're already giving a third dose of the same platform, which is Pfizer, Moderna, third dose, which is also Moderna, and then third dose of Astra. For those who receive Astra, there are two options. You can get the third dose of the Astra or an mRNA vaccine.
How about the timing, Doc? I actually know some relatives in the US na naka-third dose na nga sila, Pfizer or Moderna yung vaccine nila. Na parang ang bilis lang eh. For example, yung mga nabakunahan dito sa Pilipinas ng second quarter of the year, would they be needing it parang 8 months after being fully vaccinated or 6 months? Is that something that they should worry about?
Okay, Christine, no, we'll have to really factor in the supply of the bakuna, no? Because even if you want the booster 6 months after or 7 months after, 8 months, pero wala tayong or konti lang yung bakuna natin, we can't do that, no? Kasi ang priority pa rin talaga natin are those unvaccinated because the data really tells us that if you are not vaccinated, you really have a higher risk of getting the infection and getting severe compared to the vaccinated, no? So without assuming na ang supply is not is good or assuming that the supply is good, then we should start getting the vaccine, the booster anytime.
Yes, I've heard some doctors nga are saying na parang there are patients asking them, pero parang it's an ethical problem. Parang it's not right for them to talk about it pa nga at that point kasi marami pang hindi vaccinated. So I understand how tricky it is for doctors to answer questions like that. Doc, may isang last question na lang actually dito. Someone from alternative media was asking, totoo ba na ini-ignore yung reports of adverse events and deaths following COVID vaccination? Parang may mga ganun yatang reports, and is there even proper post-marketing monitoring for that? So parang it's an issue of human rights. What can you say po dun sa mga ganun na reports? Is it true? Meron nga bang I guess, kung anong parang totoo po ba yung mga reports na lumalabas, and is this being studied or anong ginagawa dun sa mga reports na yun?
So are you talking about mga underreporting of the adverse event, na serious adverse event, or are there adverse event na hindi na-report, something like that? Okay.
Yeah. I think
Sige, Christine.
yung parang ganun yung tinatanong. And I guess, I think even early on in the vaccination period, no, may mga nababalita, di ba? Pero parang unverified naman. Kayo po, you're in the hospitals, you're getting direct reports from the government. Ano po ba yung kalagayan ng adverse events natin in the country right now? How high is it? And what's being done dun sa mga nare-report kung ganun?
Well, I can only rely on the data, no, by the FDA, kasi sila naman yung in charge on monitoring the adverse event. And pag titingnan mo naman yung mga adverse event na nire-report ng FDA, mukhang mababa naman talaga ang adverse event, no, na not enough to be of concern, na medyo meron tayong mga adverse event na kailangan nating bantayan, no? Like yung mga myocarditis, no, Guillain-Barré, or yung mga blood clots, no? So far wala tayong nakikita doon, no? Ang advice ko siguro dito, no, is that when you are vaccinated, you need to report whatever reaction do you have, whether it's mild, moderate, especially pag severe na, any type of reaction na hindi nyo naramdaman yan before when you were not vaccinated. It's important, no? Kasi ang mga vaccination center, ang reporting is only dependent on the report of these patients. Hindi naman kayo tinatawagan araw-araw, hindi kagaya sa clinical trial na tinatawagan talaga yan araw-araw kung meron ka bang naramdaman ng ganito. The rollout adverse event is always dependent on the vaccinee. Kung hindi mo i-report yan at baliwalain mo yan, walang data magre-reflect doon sa vaccination center. Wala ring data ang makokulate ang FDA.
Doc, may isang tanong actually na interesting. Kung nagka-COVID ka na, do you really need to get vaccinated? Pwede bang exempted ka na sa vaccination?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, no? Because for one, when you have a COVID infection, you also produce an antibody. And in fact, you really have a very good neutralizing antibody, okay? But the antibody you produce when you get COVID is also important, no? Because that will protect you 6 months, 8 months, no? But even if you had that antibody, it's still better that you have the vaccine, because when you will be given the vaccine, plus you have a previous infection, mas doble ang antibody mo, mas stronger ang antibody mo, at mas longer ang protection mo. Okay? On that note, there are countries, no, like Malaysia before and Taiwan, no, na yung mga nagka-COVID na, they test the antibody and they had antibody, ang ibibigay na lang na bakuna ay isang dose na lang kumpara doon sa walang COVID. Kasi may mga data na those who had previous infection and given one dose, yung antibody level nila is the same as that for those who received that 2 dose na hindi nagka-COVID. So on that aspect, mas makasave ka ng 1 dose for this previously infected individual.
That's interesting, Doc. Is there such a thing as masobrahan ng antibodies? Kunwari, nagka-COVID na siya, tapos nag-fully dose siya. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
Nothing wrong, kasi the higher the antibody, the better will be the protection. No? Because remember, the neutralizing antibody, although wala pa tayong correlate level of protection, ano bang ibig sabihin yan? Walang level na masasabi natin at what level protected ka at hindi ka protected. No? But the higher the neutralizing antibody, the better for that person, because it's predictive of protection na hindi ka magka-COVID.
Another interesting question, Doc, na na-receive ko is, will we be forever dependent on booster shots? Parang maghahabol ba tayo na, especially, I guess, with all the variants, is this parang the reality now, or parang ang natural ano ba natin is will eventually be immune to this disease and whatever the next variants are?
Okay, that's a very important question, no? Because that's a question that we don't know. We don't know the answer. Okay, when are we going to know the answer? We will know when, by looking at those countries who are already giving booster, at titingnan natin yung mga na-booster na mga population, kung how long they were able to be protected. Kung makikita doon sa mga boosted population, after 6 months, nagka-breakthrough infection naman, tumataas naman ang mga kaso nila sa mga boosted population, then we have an idea na probably, kung 6 months lang yan, baka every 6 months, no? Kung 8 to 9 months, baka every year. So those are things na hindi pa natin alam, and we need to follow the evidence, and that's why science is very important, because we need to be backed up by good evidence and not just conclude na, okay, every year na tayong pagbakuna, pa-reserve na ako ngayon ng mga bakuna. No, we don't do that, no? These are data, these are evolving data that we should be guided.
Yes, and in fact, yung bakuna natin ngayon is iba na siya in the coming years. No? That's what people always say, nagpapalit depende dun sa variant, I guess.
Yeah, because I think, Christine, no, when you were there before the pandemic, ang palagi natin, pag dumating ng bakuna, baka masugpo na ang pandemic. Now, dumating ang bakuna, hindi pa rin nasugpo ang pandemic because there is this problem of waning immunity. Now, we need a booster. So what's next after the booster? So that's the question that we don't know.
Okay, Doc. Thank you so much at sinagot niyo lahat ng mga tanong. I'm sure marami pang ibang tanong na hindi ko na naisama din nung nanawagan ako on social media. But any final message po siguro sa ating publiko? Baka may mga hindi po ako natanong na parang that's always mentioned to you. You want to clarify? Now's the time po.
Okay, so siguro unahin ko lang, no, na at this point in time of the pandemic, we know na napaka-importante ng mga bakuna, no? And there are reports still na mataas pa rin, Christine, ang vaccine hesitancy, especially in the provinces, no? And that's why we need to really emphasize again, no, more information. Saka nagpapasalamat ako itong show mo na hopefully it can also reach these areas na they can realize how important vaccine is, no? Because nakita natin yan sa mga third or fourth surge ng cases natin, especially yung March at saka itong August, September. Sino ba ang natamaan? Sino ba ang mataas ang napunta sa ICU at namamatay? These are the unvaccinated, no? So we have to protect you, no? When vaccine will be offered to you, get it. Pangalawa, yung booster. Okay, naintindihan ko yung mga pangamba ng tao about the booster, but let's wait, no? Since our supply of vaccine is not yet that good, no? You will have your chance, the vulnerable population will have the chance to be getting the booster soon once the supply is available. And that's also part of the government plan in terms of procurement of vaccines for next year.
Thank you so much, Doc, again sa oras. I wanted to add yung minention nyo nga na marami pa rin hesitant. I've heard stories like that. Yung mga pamilya ng mga kakilala ko sa probinsya. In fact, ang kwento nila, pag may health workers, tumatakbo daw sa bundok. Literally, umaalis sila, iniiwasan nila kasi they're afraid, they don't understand it. Pero sana ma-realize nila yung sacrifices din po ng mga health workers katulad ninyo na who are at the front lines and are really, lending their service to us. Maraming salamat, Doc, sa patuloy po na pagpapaunlak nyo sa interview sa media. I know na ang dami nyo na pong ginagawa, but you're always open to talk about and clarify itong mga bagay na to para sa publiko.
Yes, Christine. So salamat din, ha? And stay safe.
Maraming salamat, Doc Jean Solante, at sa mga nakinig sa episode na ito. Sana nasagot namin yung mga katanungan nyo pagdating sa COVID vaccines. At kung sinusuportahan niyo yung aking advocacy pagdating sa tamang impormasyon tungkol sa siyensya at kalusugan, huwag kalimutang mag-subscribe sa channel at i-like ang video na ito. Tandaan, kailangan nating labanan hindi lang ang COVID-19 virus kundi ang maling impormasyon.